So maybe you're constantly worrying that the other person will leave, finding yourself sending multiple texts if they don't reply fast enough, and worrying that every little shift in their pattern of behavior means that the relationship might not last. And this can feel completely exhausting being on that type of emotional roller coaster. But what is the fastest way to effectively heal your anxious attachment style so you can leave these patterns behind and actually start to feel secure in relationships and end those patterns of accidentally pushing somebody away by holding on too tight? Well, many individuals with anxious attachment style feel like they are constantly on edge in relationships, needing that reassurance and trying to read between the lines, whether or not somebody is interested in them or truly wants to be with them. And you may find yourself the moment you don't hear from somebody, assuming the worst case scenarios, like they are definitely about to abandon you or they've lost feelings. And it can feel like a constant sense of panic and dread. And without addressing your anxious attachment style, you actually do risk pushing somebody away with those moments of neediness. And of course, you'll end up feeling emotionally drained and never truly experiencing the peace and security that you crave and deserve to have in relationships. But in today's video, I'm going to be sharing one powerful practical tool that can help you rewire these anxious patterns and completely change your anxious attachment style very fast so that you can start feeling more calm, confident, and secure in your relationship dynamics. So, first and foremost, the anxious preoccupied attachment style is essentially an attachment style that's one of three insecure attachment styles or love styles, you can think of it as. And essentially, the anxious preoccupied gets exposed to a lot of inconsistency growing up. The way I like to think of it is they get exposed to a lot of like real or perceived abandonment. In other words, you might have really connected parents who are very emotionally attuned to you, connected to you, but maybe they work a lot, or maybe one parent's really loving and caring, and another parent is very distant and withdrawn. And so that juxtaposition between the two causes you to feel kind of like, okay, sometimes I get attunement, sometimes I don't. And in more intense cases, there can be an actual abandonment, like a parent leaves the home early at a young age. And doesn't come back for a while, or there's a divorce where there's a separation from the parents. But essentially, there is, in the very least, a consistent degree of emotional abandonment that's perceived, or there can actually be a real abandonment. And essentially, what happens is because at a young age, when we're children, we are completely reliant on our caregivers in order to survive. Well, what ends up happening is as a young child, the anxious preoccupied feels this disconnecting. And it really triggers their nervous system. It really triggers like a fight or flight response because it's like, well, if the parent leaves or if the parents are not there, you literally couldn't survive. And so anxious preoccupieds at a very young age, they get the fear of survival and approval or connection deeply intertwined. And so in the adult life of the anxious preoccupied, what essentially happens is what we do, all of us, and we all have an attachment style, by the way, is every single person has their primary relationship in terms of their primary attachment figure is their parents. And in their adult life, the new primary attachment figure becomes their romantic partner. And so what essentially takes place is whenever there's a perceived abandonment in their adult relationship, the anxious preoccupied has literally a survival response, a trauma response, similar to when this programming first got conditioned into them. So as a child, if the parents were distant or not there or worked a lot, or there was a lot of like lacking of proximity taking place or lacking of closeness, that inconsistency could cause like a lot of fear in that child. And once that becomes a conditioned program, that's like your conditioning or your subconscious mind is essentially the lens you see and interact with the world through. So as an adult, what that means is that you start seeing your adult romantic partners as filling that role. And so when they distance or they take a step back, or there's some kind of like perceived abandonment or inconsistency there, it triggers a similar response, like a very deep, very intensive emotional response that feels like panic or trauma in the body. So this is essentially how the anxious preoccupied style comes about. And so you'll see things like the anxious preoccupied in their adult lives become needy or clingy or call a lot or constantly try to get closer or push the relationship along very quickly to get that sense of like certainty and commitment. And all of this stuff is just the anxious preoccupied's way of trying to cope with not having to relive those fears from their childhood again. And so when we look at like the five major things that the anxious preoccupied must do in order to become completely securely attached, there are five crucial elements. The first crucial element is to learn to get your sense of security from the inside out rather from the outside in. Now, this is through a process called individuation. And individuation means that you have to start learning and introspecting about who you are and what your needs are and how you want to make your decisions according to you designing and creating a life that you've introspected and you know fits for what lights you up, makes you happy, makes you feel fulfilled, and really learning who you are in those seven areas. Because anxious preoccupied attachment styles, they end up just constantly trying to get their sense of self from their external relationships because they're so preoccupied with not trying to have distancing. So the more an anxious preoccupied can be like, who am I? What do I want to do here with my life? Who am I? And what do I want to create in my career? What do I want my relationship to money to be like? Like, how much money do I want to save or spend? Like, actually consider like these aspects of life and really taking a look. So, career, financial, mental, like, what mental topics am I interested in learning about? What are my personal opinions, beliefs, ideas, philosophies? Like, really exploring that mental area of life. Emotionally, learning to listen to their emotions, connect to their emotional self, do emotional healing and growth work around past traumas, fears, things of that nature. And spiritual. So, like, what are your spiritual beliefs? For some people, it's just having a really strong moral compass that constitutes as spiritual beliefs. For some people, it's like being really into Buddhism or meditation or developing personal religious beliefs in relationship to a certain religion. It's really not just taking on whatever you were exposed to, but actually considering and exploring what lights you up. Same thing with the physical and relationships, like your physical health. What habits do you want to have? How do you want to eat? Your relationships, like how do you want to relate to people? What are you looking for in your friendships? What are you looking for in romantic partners? What are your standards? What are your non-negotiables? Like really exploring, developing a strong sense of self. And that happens through individuation. It's a necessary step for the AP to become secure. That's number one. Number two, you have to learn your needs. What are your needs? In terms of what makes you happy? What are your needs in terms of in a relationship? What are you really looking for? Like really learning about your personal needs and the things that light you up and drive you. And when you learn to then meet those needs in relationship to self and you're not over reliant on getting those needs met from the outside in, like let's say you have a need for encouragement, for example, or validation. If you only ever rely on your outside world to meet that for you, you're always going to feel afraid of people distancing themselves from you or taking a step back because to you, it's going to mean that those needs won't be met. And we tend to, at a deep subconscious level, think of our needs as being like our survival. Like, if our needs are not met, how will I survive? And so when people pull away, you perceive your needs being distanced from you, your ability to get your needs met being distanced. And that's part of also what creates a lot of that dysregulation. So, individuation, self reflection, who am I? What do I want to create? Having a mission and vision and plan there. Number two, needs, knowing your needs and then being able to meet them in the relationship to yourself, and being intentional about that. If you want a full course just about that, it's one of the most powerful parts of healing anxious preoccupied. I have a course you can check out for completely free for 7 days. It's an easy course, more than enough time to get through the course. And it will help you do a deep dive and discovery into all of your needs, in all areas of life, your relationships, what lights you up, what drives you, really understanding yourself more, and then coming up with healthy strategies to meet these needs. So I'll put that link down below in the description. Number three, nervous system regulation. Anxious preoccupieds tend to get really into fight or flight mode, and their nervous system really like panics essentially when they are feeling like somebody pulls away or like there's some kind of distancing happening. Learning to regulate your nervous system and stay in something called parasympathetic nervous system mode or rest and digest mode is actually something so simple. It just takes practice. You need to pick one daily habit and practice it daily. And by doing nervous system regulation work, You won't feel this intense sense of panic if somebody pulls away. You'll learn to regulate and be like, okay, I can stay in parasympathetic mode and I can deal with this in like a rational way. I can have a conversation or request a need or express a boundary, but you'll see that this response doesn't make you feel like all that panic and fear inside of your body. We also have a free nervous system regulation course you can check out using the link below. And again, free for 7 days. It's like an hour long course. It's so easy to get through and it's so easy to pick a habit and just apply it every day. And you'll start to see this reconditioning of your nervous system happening. So it's a huge third part. Number 4, we have to learn to question our stories. If you watch as an AP, your mind goes rapid fire into thinking of all the worst case scenarios that are going to happen if somebody pulls away. So you'll see that you might start thinking like they're going to leave. They don't want to be with me. Something bad happened to them. They got in an accident. And anytime your mind has these passing thoughts on autopilot that go unquestioned, you are reacting and living in the reality as if those thoughts are an absolute truth. Like when you see somebody panicked on an airplane, for example, and they're like, what if the plane crashes? They're not like, oh, what if the plane crashes? It may or may not. And statistically, it looks like it won't. Like it's not like an actual what if, like a rational what if. It's like a full, I am attached to the idea that the plane is crashing, and my body and mind and emotions are living in the reality where this is about to take place. You see people sweating on the plane or really panicking or really nervous. It's not like a, oh, what if? It's like a, what if the plane crashes? It's about to crash. And I use that analogy to really describe like the anxious preoccupied. They're not like, oh, what if my partner leaves? There's a possibility that the relationship could end at some point. Or what if, it's not like that. It's like, what if my partner leaves? What if they're in an accident? They're emotionally living in a space where when somebody doesn't call them back, they are assuming the worst, feeling the worst, and emotionally experiencing the worst case scenario. And so what you have to realize as an AP is that those things have to be questioned. And when we can recognize these stories, when we can really question them, and we can like do the work to release the emotions attached to the other side of that, we stop going through this like dynamic of being on autopilot and then creating our own suffering at the thought level without even realizing, right? You're sitting there thinking and thinking and thinking about all these worst case scenario outcomes, and you have to snap out of it, right? We have to use our conscious mind to observe the subconscious creation of things happening that's just on autopilot. You're not choosing it, it's happening to you. And we have to be able to step in, recognize it, pull ourselves out of it, and create healthy solutions and strategies to address the things that we're concerned about instead of just like suffering and then feeling really reactive. And then when we do things on autopilot, it ends up being like calling repeatedly or doing things that are from that really anxious state instead of like having the nervous system regulation tools and learning to reprogram some of these core wounds and fear so these things don't keep coming back. And also so that these fears don't end up dictating your behaviors, which lead to you doing things that actually can accidentally push people away over time. So that's a massive one. And then number 5, you have to learn healthy boundaries. Anxious preoccupieds do a lot of people pleasing. People pleasing is self abandonment, and it will keep your abandonment fears and wounds alive. So, the more that you don't show up for yourself, don't communicate about your needs, don't protect your boundaries or have your own back, though it feels like the world can just do whatever it wants with you because you're boundaryless. But as you start to learn healthy boundaries in healthy ways, this is where you instead start feeling like, okay, you know what? Here I am. I'm in this situation. I can say yes or no in an authentic way. And the more you're authentic with other people and not people pleasing, because people pleasing too is connecting from behind a mask. Like when you're people pleasing, you're not actually being your true self. And then people don't have the information when you're people pleasing to properly take you into consideration. So they'll do things that hurt you more often by accident. So the more you can say your truth, say your yeses, say your nos, state your clear boundaries, manage people's expectations, the more you'll actually come to feel seen and known and supported, which will stop those abandonment wounds from recirculating and recycling themselves. I have exciting news to share with you today, and it is that to celebrate the Personal Development School's 5-year anniversary, we are offering 40% off of your first month to our all access pass. Plus, you can also enjoy 10% off of my book, Learning Love, both of which are all about how to change your attachment style to become securely attached. So, whether you are looking to improve your relationships, personally grow, or just develop a lot of emotional mastery over the way that you feel, now is the perfect time to start. But hurry because this offer won't last long. So, head over to the link below to join today. So these are five major things that are very valuable and really all have to be addressed to become completely secure. Again, we've got like all these free courses you can check out for 7 days using the link down below. And these will help you become secure and understand how these mechanisms work in a lot more detail. So I hope this makes sense. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the future videos.